Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Crash, and today we're going to be going over the steep decline of Gears of War and what led to it. Gears of War 1 through 3 were pretty much perfect in every way that you could even imagine. I never really understood what ended up happening with this series and why it went downhill so drastically, but it kind of comes into play with how Epic Games decided that they didn't want to work on any more Gears of War games. Judgment was their last one, and that one was a pretty big stinker, and we're going to be going over every single one that is left, so that will be Judgment through 5, and seeing what truly happened to Gears of War. The first game we're going to be going over is Gears Judgment. This is following a squad called Kilo Squad, which is ran by Baird and has Coltrane in it. This is pretty cool, so you get to finally see a backstory of where they came from and why in Gears, they ended up not promoting Baird and giving you a little bit more insight on that type of information, which I really do like. I really like the past, and I wish they would have did a lot more with it. Luckily, we have E-Day coming out not too long after this, so we really only have a couple months left until we actually get to try that out. And hopefully it really does show a lot more than what this game gave you, because it is not that good of a game. But let's get right into it. The game begins with you following a squad called Kilo Squad, made up of Sophia, which is a cadet for the Onyx Guard, which is pretty much the elite class for Gears of War. So it's kind of an interesting way of showing you a special class that we really didn't get to see too much in the first 3 Gears games. The other character that you get is Paddock, which is a prior fighter for the UAR, which was the group that the COG was against not too long before the actual emergence day. So that is another cool character to throw in, and sadly they are not really used that well in this game, and we'll get into that later. Baird and Cole are pretty much just as they used to be, but actually not as interesting, at least in my opinion, as you go through this. The first thing that you're doing is following Colonel Loomis, where he is going to be holding a court case to see if you will be executed for your crimes. You don't really know what the crimes were until you get later into this, so all you have to do at this point is follow the testimonies, which sounds pretty interesting on paper until you actually get to play it. The first testimony you're going to be going through is Baird's testimony. This area that you actually get to play through, called Old Town, looks beautiful. I absolutely love the destroyed city and being able to traverse through it, and it feels really dire and feels very immersive for what they're trying to go for. But this is where you actually notice your first issue in the game, which is the wheel for your weapons is completely gone. Now it's like Call of Duty, where you press Y and you only can have 2 different types of weapons in your hand, while in the other ones you could have 2 primaries and a secondary with a grenade. Now it's just the 2 guns, whatever ones you want to pick, and then a grenade. And the grenade doesn't work as it used to. Now you just press LB to throw it, instead of having it so you can see where your teammates are. So I did kill myself a couple times with that, just because of how stupid it is. I'm not sure why they removed it and decided to do something else, but who fucking knows. I'm not even going to try to guess on it, but it just does not feel good when you actually get into it. But as you make your way through, the game starts as a run-of-the-mill of what a Gears of War game is. You just go through a couple different locations. You're trying to get to a supply run to make sure that it gets to its destination, and then you have to head to a museum. But this is where the issue comes in. Before we get into it, though, the combat that you actually do get to do before any of this happens is kind of fun. It feels just like any of the other Gears of War games. Like I said, it's pretty basic. It just feels like anything you've already played before. So as long as you enjoyed it before, you're probably going to like it now. The one thing that you'll notice at the top left, though, is that there is these new point system where it's an arcade shooter now, which I personally think is fucking stupid. I don't get it. Maybe if they had it as a side mode for people to test out and want to play, sure, that'd be fine. But I think it just is kind of bothersome having that little thing at the top left of your screen the whole time. It just bothers me. I don't really know why. It just is annoying just having it at the top left, and I wish you could completely remove it, but sadly it's part of the game system, and you'll see why later. This is where you get into the biggest problem with the game, and that is the declassified missions. These are so fucking stupid. I don't understand why they decided to switch everything up in this game and just add dumb little modes that you have to do, but why not, I guess. The reason why they suck is not because they're kind of just there, it's because they're kind of forced on you if you want to finish the story. What I mean by that is if you play through the story and decide not to do any of these declassified missions, you will not be able to finish up the plot, which is so dumb. There is a second story that you actually get to play through, but you have to do each and every declassified mission to unlock that story. I don't understand why they decided to do that. I get it that they want people to try out this new mode, but it should have been a completely separate thing for people to go and play and maybe enjoy, depending on who the player is. But as you go through and get to the declassified missions, what are these like? The one that you get at the beginning is pretty basic, where you just have to kill glowing wretches, which is completely fine by me, but it just gets worse from here, and you'll see why. After you wrap up killing the glowing wretches, this leads you to a door, and this is where the level actually ends. This is where another problem of the game comes in. At the end, you finally get to see a scoreboard and see how well you did in the story, and gives you a little bit of like how you gained your points and stuff like that, showing what you did right and like how you ended up getting to that conclusion. Like if you got downs, then you would get negative points towards your score, and how you ended up getting to your 3-star. The reason why this is so fucking stupid is the missions are like 8 minutes long, so every single mission that you play through, after like 8 minutes, you get another one of these leaderboards every single time. It wouldn't be too bad if it was based on like the act and just showed you like an overall tally system of like how you did in each and every act. That wouldn't be all too bad, but instead they're just like, oh, this is how you did in this chapter. And it just is every 5 minutes after you finish the level. It's insane how short these levels are, so you will be seeing this end screen so many times. It's actually insane. In the next mission that you actually get to play, it feels all too not bad in this one. As you go through, you end up doing another declassified mission where you have a time where the Hammer of Dawn is going to end up striking you, so you have to push through as quick as possible. It feels alright. At least this one is somewhat enjoyable, just seeing all like the hammer strikes hitting around the area, making it a lot more epic, at least in that way. The other thing that they do in this level is give you a new weapon called the Marxa, which is a UIR weapon from the prior war, which feels really good in hand. When you actually use it, it is just a semi-auto weapon, so you only can shoot one shot at a time, but if you hit headshots, it completely annihilates any of the grubs. It doesn't matter what rank they are, if it's even the boomers and stuff, it will just clean right through them, which I really do enjoy. But as you play through and get through this mission, it leads into another mission that is not all too fun. The next mission that you get to play is you going through the museum gardens, heading up to the museum. This mission is not all too bad. The only reason why it sucks though is the declassified mission. In this declassified mission, you are forced upon to use any weapon that they want you to use. So you are forced to use the hammer burst and the sawed-off shotgun only. The issue with this is the hammer burst in this game got yet another fucking change for no apparent reason. Now it is semi-auto and it feels like shit. It is one of the worst weapons I've ever used in any of the Gears of War games. It not only shoots stupid slow, but like the accuracy of it is terrible. The Marxa feels 10 times better in comparison, and I'm not sure why they made this change again. They keep changing this weapon. I'm not sure why. I think they just don't like the feel of it, and they want to find like a good spot for it, but they just keep changing it, and it keeps getting worse in each and every game, at least to me. But as you play through, the only other weapon that you get to use is the sawed-off, and I don't even like the usage of this weapon, and it's just not fun to use overall. I'd rather use a Gnasher, but whatever. But after you end up finishing up this mission, it feels alright at the end. It is kind of fun fighting through the enemies. It just sucks that I'm forced to use these weapons so I can play the other campaign. In this next level, you get to see some Onyx guards, and they are heading off to another location, so you have to take over where their post was. In this part, you actually get to see that they're pretty much assholes. They're not all too nice, not even to the cadet that is legit an Onyx guard. They see you guys as all pretty much inferior to them, which is pretty interesting for the plot, and shows you how pretty much before E-Day happened, these guys just were the elite guards, so they feel as though they are more worthy to survive over you. But as you go through this mission, it is terrible. Now the side mode that everyone loved, where it was horde mode, where you could play against a whole bunch of waves coming in, they decided, why don't we just add that to the campaign? You think people would want to play that? No, I don't. I think this feels like shit. I'm not sure why they ended up adding this to the game, but you know, whatever. As you play through this, it is not fun. All you have to do is set up some turrets, your lasers, and then get ready for a defense of this area. This is a way of padding out the game without telling you they're padding out the game, which I don't like at all. You end up taking like 10 minutes worth of time, where this mission could have been like 3 to 4 minutes if it was just a normal defense. But instead, they wanted you to just waste more time setting up all these like turrets and stuff. And then doing this multiple times throughout the campaign makes it even more unfun. Yes, this isn't just a one level issue, this is throughout the rest of the game as well, which makes it 10 times worse. But let's get into the next mission because I don't even want to talk about this garbage anymore. The next level is pretty basic, having you try to catch up with the Onyx guards and go and support them. And the way you do this is just head their way through the museum, and this is where you get the next declassified mission, which is pretty basic, where all you have to do is fight locusts that have lancers. So just don't get too close to them and you'll be completely fine. It is an okay mission. I kind of like it. It's just very basic, and I think the bare bone basic missions surprisingly end up being the best ones in this game just because of the way it's set up. The only issue I have with these types of levels, though, is some reason I had to replay so many of these museum missions, not because they were hard or I was dying over and over again. It's because for some reason I just was not getting enough points to win these objectives. Even with enough headshots and killing each and every enemy, sometimes I wouldn't even get the 3 stars even though I was doing the challenge, so I was just pretty much forced to play these missions over and over again, which made for fucking annoying content. I don't want to keep playing the same level over and over again just because I didn't 3-star it. But this game forces you pretty much at this point so that you can also unlock new items on the multiplayer, which you'll see later. As you play through, as you play and get all these stars, you end up unlocking characters like Tai or Min for like the multiplayer, which is kind of cool. I'm completely fine with them having like these special little characters that you get to unlock from playing challenges and stuff, but the way they set it up makes it unbearable to go through. This leads into your next level where the Onyx run the hell off again and you have to take over their point, and the objective for this one is to defend some armor, and it is terrible. It's another wave defense. It's just like the last level where I just had to keep redoing it just because I wasn't getting enough kills. I don't understand how I wasn't, but it just made me have to do it over and over again, which was so unfun. This wave is okay. It just feels just like the other one, just in a different room, and it's just not fun for like a story beat. I feel like I'm playing a filler like in an anime right now, but in a video game form, which feels awful. But as you go through this one, all you really do is just kill some enemies and head on to the next location. So there's really nothing to this level that is very memorable at all. After you wrap up with this level, you end up heading into a cellar where you get to play yet another very boring mission. And it's another declassified one where you have to destroy some eggs, and if you decide not to, you get punished by a whole bunch of enemies that will spawn instead. This mission is boring. You just destroy the eggs, you head into the next location and fight a decent amount of the enemies, and you fight the centipede looking monsters. I forget what they're even called, but they have like electric around them, and it's okay. Like, I genuinely don't really remember much about this level just because it wasn't really all too interesting. In this next mission, they decided to be some little goofballs and add a whole bunch of fog so you can't see shit. Right after giving you a new sniper for the marks of, so you legit can't even really use the weapon because legit you cannot see in this room at all. So as you play through this mission, the one thing I think is really dumb about this is supposed to be like a retelling of like what actually happened. How the fuck did this room just fill with fog? And another thing that happens nonstop throughout this mission is when you down the sword dudes, what's with them and just standing back up and running the hell away? I don't understand. I down them and then they're just like, you know what, I'm just gonna fucking leave. And they just stand up and run. It happened multiple times throughout this level, and then every single time I fought these cleaver looking dudes, they just keep doing this and then they respawn with their weapon after dropping their old one. I don't know what this glitch is, but I honestly kind of like it, even though it makes it very unplayable at times. After finishing this mission up, you end up meeting the main antagonist, which is General Karn, and you get to watch him annihilate some of the Honest Guards, which is a pretty cool cutscene. But after you watch them get annihilated, this is where it leads to you end up having a conversation with Loomis about using a light mass missile to wipe out the enemies, and he ends up telling you guys no, but then communications ends up getting cut off, so Kilo Squad ends up coming to the conclusion to use it, and this is where you finally get to play as Sophia and get to learn more about her. The reason why you're playing as her is because you're heading back to the academy so that you can grab the missile codes so that you can actually get the missiles online. So this leads into the next location at the academy, which is a pretty cool location that you actually get to play through. When you actually get to her testimony, the area looks awesome. The one thing I will give this game, even though I don't find this game all too fun, is that at least the environment that you actually get to explore in these games look beautiful. But aside from that, there's nothing else that's really redeeming just because of these stupid declassified missions, which leads into the next one where they take all of your ammo away and expect you to fight all the enemies with no ammo. The way you do this is every single time you get a kill, you get a little bit of ammo, but it's so fucking unfun. I don't know why they decided this was going to be one of the challenges, mostly when they have you fighting Reavers. So those things are bullet eaters, and giving you no bullets and then expecting to wipe these guys out was not fun for gameplay at all. Another thing you'll probably notice around this time if you replay any of the missions or get killed by any of the enemies, every time that you replay through it, the enemies change completely. I think this is a terrible idea. The way the game set it up in original ones is that you're supposed to strategize and learn from your mistakes from the prior match that you just played, but instead in this one they decided, oh well, every time that you fail, we're just going to give you a completely different batch of enemies, making for even worse gameplay half the time. Sometimes you'll be having fun just fighting some normal locust enemies, and then the next time you might be fighting blood mounts, making for terrible gameplay. There is one other enemy that they usually do give you a lot of, but I'm not going to be talking about them because we haven't gotten to them yet, and they are some of the worst enemies in this game, and I'm happy we never see them again after this one. In the next mission, it has you going through the academy, and this is where you get the next declassified mission where you have to deal with poison, and this one's not all too bad. You actually get a good amount of time to actually get through this, but this leads into the enemy that I was talking about earlier, which is the Rager. These things are annoying. So they first start out with the sniper, the Mark's one, and they can pretty much do a lot of damage with that. But after you do enough damage to them, they end up going into a rage mode where they become like a mini berserker and they just keep rushing at you. The only reason why these things are annoying is because not only are they bullet eaters, but there's so many of them that usually spawn half the time, so it makes for very unfun gameplay. And the one thing that makes this mission pretty dumb is as you make your way through and actually get to the end, you end up seeing the poison gas no matter what. Even if you have like a minute to spare, the poison gas still comes out, and that's how the mission ends. I'm guessing they just generally just forgot to even remove it, or they decided that made it look cooler, but I think it's just dumb overall. So after you finish up this mission, it heads into the next one, which is just another gameplay. Honestly, most of Sophia's missions are not fun. I'm gonna be real, like none of them are all too interesting or innovative in any way, and I just don't really like her overall as a character. She's just one of the ones that just like wants to follow orders. As you play through like all the Gears games, it seems like there's like a cliche of types of like what characters you're gonna get, which is like the brawny dude that's enthusiastic, the one that always wants to follow orders, the one that's really smart, and then just the one that's mysterious in the background. It's most of the time what these games are all set up, and you'll see that as you play through Gears 4 and 5. It's pretty much the same thing over and over again, which makes for pretty unfun gameplay and uninteresting characters, at least to me. Don't get me wrong, Paddock is an interesting character, which we'll be getting into in a little bit. After wrapping up with that mission, you end up finding a jackpot, and this is where you get into a declassified mission where you have to defend it, and it's also an escort mission. I don't like escort missions in games. I think they're kind of annoying, mostly because it's just based on how the troop ends up taking damage, and most of the time it's just kind of annoying how it works. It is an okay mission overall. At least the area that you play through is okay, but you just have to fight a whole bunch of flying enemies and different types of grubs that are just kind of running in, like the tickers and stuff like that, making for kind of a whatever mission that is not really noteworthy. The one thing that was kind of interesting after this, though, is I ended up getting a hard lock, so I had to completely restart the game. This only happened, I think, twice throughout my playthroughs, but I didn't have this issue in any of the other Gears games, and it's kind of surprising this one even had that issue. But I wanted to show it on the video so that you guys kind of get the idea of what it was. And it makes it kind of annoying to even want to keep playing this game. Honestly, I was so tempted to stop playing after this just because I already wasn't having a good time, and then I had to deal with this in the background. And it wasn't just like a wait a couple seconds to actually get in. It legit was a hard lock. I had to completely restart. Luckily, after the hard lock, I ended up being able just to pick up from where I last left off, so at least that was a positive that I didn't lose any of the progress that I made. The next mission you play through, though, is you using a snub pistol, and it's another escort mission, and the declassified thing is you only can use the pistol. The mission is pretty boring, and I honestly kind of feel bad for the people that are huge, longtime fans of Gears of War, because this game is just, like, unbearable to get through. I am having a hard time even wanting to talk about it. It was such a slog to try to actually get through this game, and I was just keep looking up like how far am I after each and every chapter to make sure that I was almost to the complete like area thing for it. The one thing that they did at least add at this part is a crossbow to use, and it's an okay weapon. I didn't really find it all too interesting. It just used explosives. So if you're into that, I guess it's somewhat fun, but it's not really my cup of tea personally. The next mission that you get to play, though, is yet another wave defense. I don't get why there's so many fucking wave defense missions in this game. They're not fun. The declassified mission for this one is that it spawns in the bugs first to fight, but it's not fun. It's not an interesting mission. It was actually really slow compared to the other wave defense ones, and all of them are slow, so I don't even understand how they ended up messing it up even this bad. It's just worse overall. I just generally don't get how they ended up coming up with the idea of like what they wanted people to be able to play. And what's so funny about these like wave defense missions is there's no horde mode in this game. What the fuck? What's the point of this? So you decided to remove horde mode to make a wave defense mode in your campaign that sucks ass. Like, I don't get it. They do have modes that are kind of like horde mode, but it's not exactly that in this one. Instead of it's like a 10 wave defense mode, while in the original it was like 50 waves that you had to defend through, which made it a lot more interesting. And instead they wanted to do something completely different with this one. And it's just so stupid to me. I genuinely don't understand why they would remove it, but you know, whatever. If you enjoy this type of gameplay, at least this is a positive for you that you get to do wave defense every 5 missions. But personally for me, it's just not all too interesting, and it just makes the game overall unfun for me. After wrapping up that mission, though, you guys finally get to leave the facility and head off to the next mission, which is following the new character Paddock. And this is the UIR soldier, and this is actually not all too bad for missions, and personally probably my favorite part of the campaign. When you play through these ones, you get to follow him and get a little bit more of insight. The one thing that you're going to be trying to find is the teacher that we were looking for at the academy. He ends up not being there, so he's at his mansion, so we head that way. The one thing you do find out around this time is that there is something going on between the teacher and Sophia, but we're not really told about what it is until like later into the mission. His first thing that you do in this mission for his declassified mission is that you are only allowed to use shotguns. At least this one is okay. At least they do pack a punch, unlike when the hammer burst was a weapon that we're using, or the snub pistol. At least this weapon actually is viable for any type of combat. So this is an okay mission. They end up introducing the blood mounts back in this mission, and it is pretty annoying having to deal with them, but luckily the shotgun just like I said, packs a punch, so at least you're annihilating those things pretty quick. But as you make your way through, this mission is overall okay and not all too interesting, but at least Paddock as a character is okay, and he actually has some interesting depth to him that you get into a little bit later. The next mission has you going through this building and gives you one of the same things that we've already played through for a declassified mission, which is fog. At least this one makes a little bit more sense because they said they're throwing smoke bombs in there constantly, and you can actually see them throwing it, so it does make sense at least for the gameplay in this one. but it makes everything unplayable because you can't really see much. But it's an okay mission. Like, I actually had somewhat of fun because it actually did have add a little bit of challenge, and it wasn't just like the enemies just were just throwing these things out of their ass and there was just a whole bunch of smoke for no apparent reason. At least they actually gave some reasoning to it in this level. But yeah, there's nothing really else to this level aside from you just shooting some enemies and heading on. Sadly, it's weird that these are the best missions in the game. It's just because you're just kind of zoning out just shooting enemies, and it just makes for the best gameplay overall in this game. This next mission, though, I absolutely hate. You head through another building, and the declassified mission is that there's going to be an explosive that detonates, and all you have to do is just fight a whole bunch of enemies that you see, and it's okay. It's only kind of annoying just because there's so many goddamn enemies here. And the enemies that actually spawn wouldn't be all too bad if it wasn't guaranteed you were going to have 4 fucking ragers at the end. And it doesn't even matter if you escape the building before the actual place blows up. Like, you could be completely outside of the area. If you haven't killed all the enemies, you still blow up and fucking die. I think that's so dumb. I don't get why it's like that. I technically escaped the facility, but they're like, oh, well, you didn't kill all the enemies, so you're going to have to replay it again. It's just so annoying for no reason at all. But yeah, no, this mission just sucks. I was going to give it some type of positive, but there is generally nothing positive about this level. It's just kind of annoying, and it's the only time limit mission I actually couldn't stand playing. The next level has you running through the streets while you fight through a decent amount of enemies, and the way they have this one spiced up for the declassified mission is has troops spawn behind you. At least this one feels pretty intense, and it's kind of fun having to deal with like enemies coming from all around you, and it gives you the challenge that is actually not all too bad. It feels actually pretty good. I honestly personally like it. I think there's nothing really they could have changed about this mission to make it any better. The one thing that you get to actually see at this point too is that the mansion is getting attacked by a whole bunch of the swarm and reavers flying around. So that's pretty cool, just seeing like all that happen up in the sky. And you're just trying to make your way to the place, and after you fight through a good amount of enemies, this leads into the next mission. Before I get into the next mission, I will say the things that make Paddock so interesting as you go through this is you learn that he is pretty much a war criminal. Like, he is not a good person at all. Like, his people are really known for like torture and stuff, which I think makes him a lot more interesting as a character. So as you like learn more about him, it just shows that he was not friendly with the cog. He was willing to kill them and is only looking out for himself. So the light mass missile has like its own motives to it aside from, oh, I just want to help us annihilate this threat. He actually has his own little like dealings and what he wants to deal with the cog with. So it makes him a lot more enticing as a character, at least to me. I actually really like him, and I wish we would have gotten a lot more of him. But sadly, after Judgment, you do not see him in Gears 4, but you do see him later in the series, which is a good thing, at least to me. Around this time, we're just going to start skipping around levels so that this video doesn't take 3 hours to get through. And we're going to just start talking about the ones that actually have some key notes to them. Like this one mission that we're going to be going over adds a new grenade launcher, which is pretty interesting. It's one of the UIR weapons. And this is one of the ones where they just add a whole bunch of traps for your declassified missions. So you have to destroy all these traps to get through them. And it's okay overall. The only ones that we really skipped were just you going through a couple other levels of you just running and gunning. There's just not all too interesting, and I genuinely don't know how to even put any more input into them, so that's the reason why we're just going to be skipping them. After heading into the mansion, you end up finding out the little secret that there was, and that is Sophia had a sexual relationship with the teacher, but she ended up stopped going and meeting with him because she found out that he had a wife and kids, and this leads into one of the more depressing parts where you actually get to learn the fate of his family and him.
This isn't good. But we still need the launch codes. Try to hack into Elliot's computer.
Hello, Dr. Elliot. You have one new message from Elliot. Nora.
We reached the shelter and there's too many people here. It's really bad. I don't know what to do. You told us the shelter would be safe, but there's fighting outside now. It's really close. You told us to come here. You told us it would be safe.
I honestly love this scene, and it adds a little bit more like serious tone to the game that the game was desperately needing. The next mission that you actually do is another wave defense. Who would have thought? It's pretty fun. Not really. It's actually pretty awful. You end up fighting a berserker at the end, so that's like the only special thing that they actually added to this one. The berserker, you just have to burn it with a flamethrower, but it's not a fun mission at all. You just fight through a whole bunch of different locusts, and like I said, if you fail, you end up having to fight different types. So yeah, it's just not fun. I genuinely don't know why they keep doing this, but this is all you get for gameplay. So after you end up doing this and getting it wiped out, and the computer ends up stealing all of, like the information that you need, so the robot ends up getting it all, you end up heading into the next testimony, which is the coal train, so where you have to set up the light mass missile. This mission starts like a D-Day, where you have to push up the shoreline and fight a whole bunch of locusts that have taken over the facility, and it's actually pretty fun. I actually enjoyed this level. The only thing that is kind of annoying are the bombs and stuff, but that's part of the declassified mission, but the bombs aren't all too bad. Once you actually learn where they actually are, it's pretty much a breeze to get through. I do actually think this mission overall is pretty fun, and there's not really any negatives to it. The next one that you actually get to play is pretty much another timed one. So what makes this one stupid easy is that you're able to use one of the vehicles, I forget what they're called, the silverbacks, and just wipe out a whole bunch of enemies. It's somewhat fun. It's nice to see the silverback back, and it's not being overused like it was in Gears of War 3, so it still has the charm to it. So all you have to do is kill a decent amount of enemies and then just push on to the next location, which is a complete breeze. The only thing that kind of sucked is I had to play this mission twice, is because I couldn't get enough enemies to actually kill, so I had to keep restarting it until I got enough kills so I could get the 3-star on it. Honestly, aside from those two missions, there's nothing really else that's quite important in the story. When you play through the rest of the levels, they're all just like run-of-the-mill missions again, where you just have a declassified thing where it goes foggy, different weapons, everything that you've already been dealing with throughout the game, so I'm not even going to go into them. So when you get far enough, you end up setting up the light mass missile to get launched, and after doing so, you end up talking to Colonel Loomis, and he tells you not to do it, and of course you decide to, and this is where it ties into you actually being able to talk to Marcus. You end up seeing him pop up, and he was actually asking for support, so you guys are starting to head their way to actually give them support so that they don't end up dying. Once you end up actually heading outside, it leads into yet another wave defense. Woo! This is what we need. This is what we need in my games. You end up just defending the beach. At least this one's actually kind of fun because the Normandy beach vibe is kind of fun to go through. But after you kill a decent amount of enemies, you just get back into another boat and leave. The only thing that makes this kind of dumb is just like, why didn't you just get into the fucking boat and leave? Like, at all before this? Like, why did you have to sit there and fight the rest of the waves? But, you know, whatever. The one thing I think is kind of dumb, though, is Loomis is all upset that you end up shooting this light mass missile. Why the fuck would we keep it in there? The locusts have taken it over. What are you gaining from keeping that light mass missile in an area that is run by hostiles? It makes no apparent sense at all, and they don't really give you any insight on why he thinks it's a good idea, being like, okay, let's just keep it in there, even though legit no one can actually get access to it because the locusts took over. But yeah, let's make it make sense. After this, your objective is to get back to the museum and support Marcus. You are playing as Baird again, and you just pretty much do the same things that you were doing over and over again with the other levels. So you get to use all of these other declassified missions and stuff like that. I'm not really going to go all too much into them anymore because you kind of get the idea of it. Most of these missions feel alright. Honestly, they're a lot better than the other ones, so I'm not going to go into them as much as I was with the ones prior. The things that make this one interesting, at least, where the environments are still really cool, even in these locations. I really like the rooftop levels where you actually get to fight and defend it and get ready for the attack and shooting of the light mass missile, which leads to this.
Last words for our pal?
What? The bot?
What's its name anyway?
Jack. No. It's Troy. That's a terrible name. You won't have it for long.
Cadet Hendrick, what is your position?
We're aiding another unit, sir.
What unit? Did you stay on the island as ordered?
Colonel, if we don't fire the light mass, everyone in Halvo Bay is going to die.
Lieutenant, listen carefully. That weapon is being saved by smarter men than we for a purpose. If you fire it, I will have you tried and shot.
Fine, I'll see you in court. I suggest you take cover, sir.
After you end up saving Marcus Phoenix, you end up in the next mission where you are doing another wave defense against hordes. Yes, we get another wave defense mission in this game. This one isn't all too bad. Honestly, I think it looks kind of cool. Mostly for the declassified mission, they decide to fog up the area, which makes sense because of the explosion that just went off not too far away from you. So it all is kind of fitting in this area, at least for that. But it's an okay mission overall. But this leads into actually the court case that is happening right now, which I thought was a pretty interesting detail in this. The rest of the story follows the present day, so pretty much what happens is the courtroom is attacked by the locusts and they finally break in, and Loomis ends up running away like a coward, and this leads into the next couple missions that you get to play. At least with the declassified missions with this area, they're not all too bad, aside from the first one that you get to play where you are forced to use cleavers in this like really close room fighting area, and it's really not that fun of gameplay, and the weapon swings stupid slow, so it just feels terrible overall. What makes these other ones feel good is honestly that you are able to see the fatigue of these characters for once. In any of the other Gears of Wars, they are fighting for 2 days, legit just 2 days. All this stuff is happening within those 2 days, so they're not even taking a rest break. So it's kind of surprising that they don't have any type of fatigue. At least with the declassified missions with this one, you actually get to see the fatigue. You actually get different nerfs during certain levels. Like some of them you do not heal, while in other ones, if you get hit by like a bullet or two, you end up having different like straying shots, so it's hard to hit enemies. I think it makes it a lot more interesting than just some crappy, oh, here's another weapon to use, or let's fog up a room type of objective. At least they try to spice it up a little bit at the end, which I do like. Another thing I think is interesting about this area is it's okay. It looks alright. It's honestly not the best looking area compared to the other ones that you actually get to fight through. This one's probably my least favorite area actually in the game that you get to fight through. Aside from Paddock's, I didn't think that one looked all too great because of the fog, but I do like Paddock overall as a character, so it made it a lot more interesting in that area at least. So after you fight through a decent amount of enemies, you end up pushing outside and meeting up with Colonel Loomis, and this is where you get to fight the final boss, and that's General Karn. General Karn is a pretty easy boss, honestly. I don't really know what else to say about him. I think he looked kind of interesting, and I thought it was going to be a very exciting boss fight. But he honestly just does like some basic attacks, and once you damage him enough, he just sends in hordes to attack you, making for like a whatever type of boss fight. I feel like I'm playing something that's like made in like the 2000s era, like with the crappy fights where, oh, the boss isn't really the main objective. We're just going to keep throwing hordes at you, and hopefully you die from those instead, making it overall not all too interesting. But at least the ending cutscene was pretty cool, and you end up finding out that they end up dropping the charges on you, which I think is an interesting detail, showing that Loomis finally understands that you made the right decision with a light mass missile. The only thing that really changes at this point in time is Baird is not able to get higher than private at this point, in like the army, which I think is an interesting detail and shows why he wasn't ever promoted in any of the other Gears games and why Coltrane ended up being like the leader of the squad in Gears of War 3, which I always thought was kind of surprising that he ended up getting picked, but that makes more sense now with this plot and the side. Overall, I think the game was awful. The story was okay. The gameplay was alright. It feels like any other of the Gears of War games, but kind of worse in a lot of different aspects, mostly because of the declassified missions and how atrocious some of these missions are. Like, I feel like I'm playing a lot of filler in almost every single mission with too many escort missions and too many wave defenses when they could have spiced it up with different details or just entirely removed the levels. If they didn't have any ideas of like how to fill out these levels, I'd rather just not see them at all. At least that's how I feel. Like, I just feel like we're just throwing stuff in just because they didn't know how to pad everything out. But, you know, this is what you end up getting with just padding stuff out instead of just giving us a 4-hour campaign instead. The other thing that you unlock at this point, though, after you get all the declassified missions, and if you want, you can collect all the 3 stars, is you get some characters online, but you also unlock the second campaign called the Aftermath. Before we talk about Aftermath, though, what did I think about the characters overall? Honestly, I think Baird is a good character and so is Coltrane, but they are side characters through and through. They aren't really interesting enough to make them main characters, and I think that's why it wasn't as enticing when I played through this game, because they just don't hit as well as other characters that we've had, like Marcus or Dom. Like, I would rather play as Dom or something like that and have an interesting story with him. But with him, it's just not all too interesting as a leader. They don't really talk throughout this whole campaign. As you're playing through, you'll even notice that. They kind of just sit there and say nothing. The only time you really hear them talking is whenever you start up a declassified mission or when they're talking to Colonel Loomis. Aside from that, this team does not talk to each other at all, making the game a lot more interesting because there's no like connection between the group and there's no camaraderie that makes it a little bit more interesting in that aspect, which really does suck. But how was the Aftermath story? I don't really like it. I'm going to be real, this was not even anything to be writing home about, or not even feeling too rewarding. Honestly, it felt like a slog to get through. It's going over what happened when they split off at Anvil Gate in Gears of War 3 and where Baird and Colt ended up running off to, making for a somewhat interesting little thing thrown in to show you how the UIR ended up working out with the COG, because I was always curious in Gears of War 3 why that even ended up happening, but it makes for a kind of whatever campaign. You get to see where Paddock and Sophia ended up off. Sophia ended up dying, so that's pretty cool, and Paddock ended up being the one to survive, and this is just like a whatever campaign thrown onto the side. I'm honestly not going to even go over the levels because it's not even interesting enough to even talk about. Most of the time that you're playing with them, you just see that Paddock still has like a grudge against like the COG and stuff like that. There's some interesting things like the Easter egg that you can find in this area, but aside from that, there's nothing all too inspiring. Or at least it shows you how you get the boat. It's by blowing up a building and it falls into the water, and then you sail it your way over there, but aside from that, it's just not all too interesting. I honestly don't understand why they decided to throw this in on the side. Maybe because they knew some people would want something like from the past, or, you know, like some resemblance to it. But, you know, it just didn't make for a great gameplay overall. I am confused about this, though, is why would they add the Lancer Mark II into the campaign in the originals, even though it wasn't really made, when they could have just had it in the second act where you go into Aftermath and just had the Lancer there, so it made sense for them to add it to the multiplayer. But instead they added the Lancer Mark II into the story, completely retconning the idea of like where the Lancer was made. But, you know, whatever. I guess that's what we're going to go with, and it's just stupid overall. Honestly, I don't think this game's worth playing. I don't even think, even if you want to find out about the Aftermath part, it's even worthwhile. Honestly, I would just watch like a review of like all the background stories and stuff online and just read the comics there instead, because this game is just not fun. I just genuinely don't find anything in this game all too interesting. I would go over the multiplayer and stuff, but there is no fan base for this game, which makes sense. Honestly, I don't see why anyone would want to play this one when there's like other ones like Gears 3 or even the newest one to go and play instead. So it makes sense why no one's actually getting on this game to even do anything. And yeah, that's how I feel overall. I don't think the game is worthwhile to go back to. Maybe if you are like a longtime fan, it is nice to see this type of stuff. But aside from that, I just generally would not recommend. But let's get into Gears of War 4.
And we're back. Finally today in New Ephyra, First Minister Jin commemorated the 25th anniversary of the end of the Locust War.
Today, we are humbled by the presence of 2 generations of men and women who braved every danger, who fought the battles that made us what we are, including the most pivotal encounter of the Pendulum Wars, Ashbow Fields.
Santiago! I'll spare you the inspirational speech, Private. You know what to do.
Yes, sir. All right, let's do this. We take down those towers, cripple their communications, then raid the lab. Command wants the Hammer of Dawn. Command gets the Hammer of Dawn.
The introduction into Gears of War 4 is by far my favorite in any of the Gears games I've actually played. This is so awesome. You follow Colonel Hoffman's retelling of the story pretty much in his mind, showing you the Pendulum War right off the bat, which is awesome. We never even got to see this in any of the other games, so this is the first time you're actually going to be able to fight the UIR for the first time, making it a lot more interesting than just fighting Locust Horde like you've done in every other game, but it's actually human-on-human action, making it more exciting, and honestly makes me want a game that's based on this. Sadly, we aren't getting that, but at least we're getting something for emergency, so at least that's a positive in some way. This mission overall is pretty fun. It's really short. I wish it was longer, honestly, but you are with Dom Santiago and you are playing through the first mission and you're just playing as some random grunt that's part of the army. This is by far what I like in any of the games. I always like being the generic soldier. I'm not a huge fan of always being like the high general or something like that. Sometimes being the background character makes it a lot more exciting and it makes everything feel like, oh, it's not all revolving around me. I'm not important. I'm just that random guy that's running in and helping and supporting the group, making it a lot more interesting, at least to me. The environment that you get to see at this part is beautiful. It looks 10 times better than any of the other Gears games, but to be fair, it is one of the newer ones, so it makes sense that it would look better. But it just looks good, even now. Compared to a lot of games I've played in the last 5 years, this looks amazing compared to those. And it legit still looks beautiful even compared to Gears 5, making it show that this game was a statement for what good graphics look like. When you play through this mission, it's pretty basic, but it is still really fun to do. All you have to do is go steal the information on how to make the Hammer of Dawn work and get the accuracy right, making it a really interesting way of introducing how the Hammer of Dawn was actually made for people that didn't know that. Personally, I did know this because I have looked into the comics and stuff, so I understand all the information about the game. But for people that haven't read any of that and just play the games, this is a great way of actually showing them how it all actually happened. So I'm happy for that. But all you have to do at the end is defend this door, and then after they steal the information and you head out, you end up dying in this mission, making it actually really cool. I actually like that you end up dying at the end, showing that you were just an expendable soldier, but you did sacrifice yourself for pretty much the greater good, making it a really interesting first introduction mission. The next mission has you following Min during the Emergence Day. This is so fucking cool. I was not expecting this to happen throughout this game. I just kept saying this is amazing out loud each and every level that I got to play at the beginning because they all felt so cool. It was awesome being able to see Min again after Gears of War 1 and seeing what he was doing at the beginning of the war. And of course it is around the same stuff that you have to do in the first level where you have to defend this location and then you all end up dying, showing that sacrifice is what was needed to make everything work out in the end run, which I thought was interesting. This leads into the last level of you defending Anvil Gate with Colonel Hoffman, with the rest of the crew that's left, which is all just medics, which I think is an interesting detail to throw in. And you are just defending for the last couple of minutes before the emotion countermeasure ended up kicking in from Phoenix. So that was a really cool scene to show all of the Locusts pretty much get defeated and killed, and all these people end up surviving and leading into the modern day right after this, which is okay. This is where the game kind of goes downhill, and I'll kind of get into those reasons right now. The game starts with you playing as the character JD, and this is the son of Marcus Phoenix, and he's more of like the leadership role, which makes him a little bit more interesting, and he's more of a charismatic character, more than what Marcus was. Like, Marcus was a charismatic person, but he didn't really show it as well as this guy does. And then the other two characters that you get part of your crew are Dell and Kate. Dell is more of like the nerdy type, so he's more of like Baird, but not as cocky as him. And Kate is probably the most unique, just being like more secluded and stuff like that. And then you have her uncle, Oscar, who is sarcastic and pretty much hates the cog with all of his passion. You guys are part of the outsider group, so you are not a part of the cog in this game, which is an interesting detail. And the first thing that you're trying to do is break into a cog facility to steal a machine. So you guys are making your way through this, and you end up getting caught in this new thing called a wind flare. These things are pretty interesting. It's just like a lightning storm that just keeps like hitting the ground, and it's impossible to move in. Even if you like throw grenades and stuff like this, the details make it like fly away in the wrong directions, making it harder to use them. So you have to be smart when you're actually dealing with this like environment, which makes it a little bit more interesting, but it gets really annoying later, which we'll get into in a bit. Once you actually get through the storm, though, you end up breaking into the facility. By breaking in, I mean they open the door, so you just walk your way in. This leads to you seeing how much like time has advanced and how everything works now, while you get to see like all these robots working on construction and building up these settlements so that new population can actually move into these facilities so that they can live there instead, making it a little interesting. And I love that idea, being able to see like all these environments actually getting worked on and showing like how everything actually comes together, making it a little bit more interesting. The one thing I do not like, though, is the enemy that they introduce at this part, which is the Baird bots. Those things are called DBs, and they are not fun to fight. I think they're really boring. I think the design of them is not all too interesting compared to like the locusts and stuff. This is by far one of the least interesting type of enemies that you get to fight, and they play a major role in this game. I think it's like 3 acts worth of gameplay for them before they become more of like a back burner type of character, which really sucks because they are not interesting. They talk a lot, so when you get into like the gunfights and stuff with them, you just expect like them to just keep blabbing off nonstop about how you are not allowed to be there, or like you are not supposed to be holding weapons, stuff like that, making them kind of annoying. The one thing that makes it interesting, though, around this area is not only did they talk about the settlements and show you how they are built, they also talk about this place called Settlement 2, which ended up getting attacked by the COG. And this is the reason why JD and Dell ended up leaving the COG, is because of the way they treated the people afterwards. JD follows Dell out of the COG because he trusts in him to, like make that right decision. And the reason why they did leave is because when they did have a protest in Settlement 2, they ended up just killing the people that were protesting. So they saw it as, like, this is not right. You're not supposed to be doing stuff like that, making it a little bit more of an interesting story, at least at the beginning. The other thing that you get at this point is that you're able to drag enemies over like different types of things so that you can assassinate them, making the gameplay a little bit different and spice it up a little bit more, so people don't just sit and cover and wait for you to point out so that they can just shoot you in the face with a Nasher. Now you can actually grab them over the cover and kill them with like an execution, making it pretty interesting gameplay. Usually I just use the shotgun and blast them away because the execution thing takes a little too much time, so you end up dying half the time when using it. But it is an interesting detail that they threw in that I actually do like. But how are the new weapons? Honestly, I don't find them fun. All the weapons that the bots use, I don't think are very inspired. They just feel really boring. Like the one is more like an SMG, which is called the Enforcer. Then they have the Overkill, which is like a shotgun type. And that one's not all too interesting. It's like an automatic shotgun, but I just do not like the feel of the weapon overall. I think it just feels kind of like shit. So it's not all too interesting, and I don't really use it as much as I want to. It's just generally just one of those weapons where I just would not pick up unless I had no other choice to actually get like a different weapon. But yeah, it's not all too interesting of like new weapons. The M-bar is at least interesting. It's like a laser sniper. So when you hold it down, it does like this blast, and it completely annihilates the enemies, so at least that one's somewhat interesting. The other thing that you get though is when you destroy these other enemies called like the Guardians, you can take their weapons off of them, which are like the Tri-Shot, which is like an LMG type, just like the Mulcher. And it's pretty much literally the same thing, just has a lot better accuracy. And the only other weapon that they have at this point in time is the missile one that you also get from Guardians. You can rip that off of them as well. But aside from that, that is all the weapons. The other enemies that they end up introducing though throughout this level is the Seekers, which are these little bots that just roll towards you. So it's pretty much wretches again. So just expect the same type of gameplay. They do explode like the glowing wretches, so it legit is the same type of enemies, just like in a different form. And the only other one that you get to see is like these bigger versions of the DBs, which hold the shotguns and they eat a lot more damage. And if you do enough damage to them, they like to go and blow themselves up on you. So you just gotta run the fuck away because they legit will just blow you up and kill themselves and kill you half the time as well. Overall, this first little act that you get to play through, or at least chapter, isn't all too interesting. I do like some of the new things that they added, making the combat a little bit more flavorful, but it just doesn't really make up for anything that's actually going on. It just is kind of boring with the robots because they just aren't interesting for enemy variety. The second part that you get to play through in chapter 2 though is you just sitting on an elevator when you finally find the thing that you're looking for. And it just keeps getting stuck and moving up and down, and then you end up having to get to the top again after Del just keeps trying to rework it and get it to the next location. So it's one of these like annoying missions where you just keep dealing with like waves of enemies while you're just sitting in the circle area trying to deal with all the robots that are coming to attack you. The one interesting thing about this though is the machine that you ended up stealing is able to spawn you in different types of weapons. So if you are out of ammo, you can just go up to it and buy the weapon that you're using, or you can buy a different weapon so that you can deal with different types of attacks that are happening, making it a little bit more interesting. And it gets you ready for like horde mode that they have. So like it gives you an idea of like how it is going to be in that mode instead. So at least that was one positive, showing you like the new item that you're going to be using the whole time. But it just isn't all too interesting of a mission, honestly. Just fighting through like hundreds of DBs and just getting stuck on this elevator just doesn't make for interesting gameplay, at least to me. Once you get done and get back outside to Oscar, you end up seeing him getting captured, and they are stopping you to ask you why you are kidnapping their people. And this is the reason why there's so many DBs in this facility, is because you are kidnapping their people, quote unquote, and you're not sure what she's talking about. This is pretty much the main antagonist in this game, which is Minister Jin. And after having this little conversation before you can finish it up though, she ends up getting ran the fuck over by one of the trams, and you get picked up by another one, and then it leaves. For some reason, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why we hop into it, but your character decides to hop into it and trust it. You end up heading to the next location where you guys end up crashing, and you have to hold out and fight a decent amount of enemies here. This part is alright, introducing you to the Condor, which is a plane that drops out more DBs, making it a lot more intense for the gameplay because it kind of just scatters them around. So you have to watch from many different directions, and also you're dealing with all these big ass robots that want to go blow themselves up on you. That sounds crazy. Hold on. But when you actually get farther in, it is somewhat fun just fighting through this city, and when the walls and stuff are getting destroyed and stuff, it makes it a lot more intense than just what it was before. At least it is a positive in that light, but aside from that, there's not much else going on. But it is overall a pretty fun little level that you get to go through. After defeating the DBs and getting out with the Fabricator, you end up heading back to the Outsider camp, and this is where Jin ends up showing up to talk to the leader of the Outsider camp, which ends up being Kate's mother. When they end up having the conversation, Kate's mom ends up just destroying the robot, and ends up leading to the all-out war inside the base, and this is where Wave Defense is back. Oh my god. Why? I hated so many of these in Judgment, and it sucks to see them back in this one. At least there's not as many in this game. I think there's like 2 to 3, so at least that's one positive, even though I'd rather see none of them at all. But you end up setting up the base, and this is where the fabricator comes into play, and you can end up building turrets and different things to defend the base. And after you get them set up, you get introduced to another character named Carmine, which is awesome. I love the Carmine brothers, and he's dead.
Oh shit! Moving!
The location that you get to defend is at least kind of fun, but I'm just fatigued from all the other wave defenses I had to play, so it isn't as fun as I would hope it would be, but it is an overall okay mission. All you have to do is just keep pushing the DB back, and after you destroy enough of them, they finally let up and just leave. And this is where Kate's mom ends up freaking out on you because of how the mission went. She said there would not be casualties, at least that's what JD and Dell said, but it ended up leading to this happening, so she blames this all on you. So you guys, as like a way to fix it or, you know, make things right, is you head over and get the fabricator working so that you can get power inside the facility again. And once you do that, this leads into the next cutscene where you end up seeing a new creature come out of nowhere and capture the whole goddamn base. Everyone disappears throughout the night. You guys are only okay just because your mom ends up setting up this thing so that they can't get inside, and after that happens, you make a boom shot and blow your way out of the building. And then after this, you guys are trying to figure out where to go, and this is where it leads to you getting to the Marcus estate. Once you reach the estate, it's all run down and pretty much looks like it hasn't been worked on in years, but you end up heading to the front door, and once you actually get there, you actually get to see Marcus, which is much older than the last time you've seen him. It is 25 years worth of time that has skipped, so it makes sense that he's a lot older now. And once you actually go in there and actually talk to him, this leads to Jin showing up again with her robots, and Marcus ends up cutting her in fucking half. And it leads into a whole shit show where the whole estate ends up getting attacked. And this mission is pretty intense and quite enjoyable to go through. I enjoyed defending the estate because it is a very cool environment to actually go through. And all you have to do at this point is go into the armory, get new armor, and you fight your way through with Marcus leading into the gardens where this happens.
There's a dropship! Shit, they're gonna mess up my fucking tomatoes!
After you watch the complete destruction of all of Marcus's tomatoes, you end up heading out, and this leads into yet another wind flare that happens in the game. While these things do look cool, it is pretty annoying how often you end up seeing them in the game, to the point where it's like, I don't even understand why it's in the game in the first place. Like, I get that this is one of the effects of what happened when Phoenix's father ended up making that countermeasure happen, but it's just really fucking annoying seeing it so often as you do, just because it makes everything really bogged up so you can't really see, and like the wind and stuff makes your character move slower, and you just have to keep running around lightning so you don't get immediately annihilated by it while you're trying to deal with the robots. It just makes for very unfun gameplay overall, at least to me. After you push through and kill a decent amount of them, you end up heading to the garage, and after it falling on top of you because of yet another wind flare, you end up escaping in a motorcycle. The only other enemy that they actually introduce around this time is a helicopter to fight, but after you defeat the helicopter and stuff, this leads into yet another enemy, which is a different type of plane that has like explosives all over it, which is pretty damn cool. I enjoyed trying to destroy this. It actually made for a decent railgun shooter mission. I personally thought it was kind of fun, but after you end up taking it down, this leads into where you have to head to the mines, where you're going to find out what exactly captured Kate's family and like all the rest of the people that were part of the outsider group. After you reach this location and actually head into the place, you see that it's pretty much dead. There's no one around, so you make your way through and try to find out what's going on. And once you end up hitting this one location, you start seeing these things called snatchers, and you make your way to try to interact with it to see what ends up happening. Marcus comes up with a plan to throw a bomb at it, and once his plan ends up failing because Marcus ends up getting attacked by another snatcher, he's end up captured, and this is where you have to go and try to save him before he ends up getting killed. Your next objective is to make your way back to Marcus and try to find him in the mines. And the way you do this is you just go through different parts of the city, and this introduces you to the new enemy called the Swarm. You get to see a decent variety of different ones that you get to fight, which make up the Juvies, which are pretty much the wretches from the original games, which are the troops that just kind of rush at you and try to kill you. The drones, which are just like the ones in the original games, so pretty much the basic troop, the Locusts. And then you have a couple other ones called like the Sires, which are the bigger version of the Locust, pretty much overall. So all of them kind of just feel like they're rehashes of older enemies, and you'll find out why later. But yeah, they're pretty fun to fight against, but it just feels like I'm playing any of the other Gears of Wars at this point. So they're not all too interesting for like gameplay, but at least the place that you get to traverse and check out looks at least cool, but all the levels feel kind of meh around this time. You just make your way through the city and into a church, and this is where you actually get to see the drones actually be made. And it's by taking the bodies of like all the humans that they've been capturing and then turning them into juvies, and then the juvies evolve into the drones, which is pretty interesting for like a plot device. At this point, all you are really doing is killing a whole bunch of these new drones and juvies and making your way to try to find the Snatcher. And along the way, you just keep running into different hordes of them, and it makes for okay gameplay. One of the things that they also add on for you to do is be able to shoot down these like masses of like gunk made up of like humans inside it, and once you actually knock them down, you can use them as cover, so it adds a little bit more flavor to the combat and gives you some puzzles to use to get closer to your enemy so that you can kill them. So at least that's pretty fun for the gameplay. And you do have a couple little defenses that you have to do, and they're somewhat fun just seeing like all the hordes that the game can handle at this point because of like, you know, like the new engine and stuff. So at least those are fun as well to go through. After you make your way to the catacombs, you end up finding a mine shaft, and this is where you end up being able to head down. And you take this huge elevator that barely even works, and this is where yet another wave defense mission comes into play, and this shit is really boring. I personally do not like any of these types of missions in this game. When you do it, it just has you sit there for like 10 to 20 minutes just trying to pad out the story, it seems. And it's just not as fun. All you do is just defend this little location, and after doing so, the elevator ends up breaking and you guys fall down. And this is where you end up finding the hive. That's what they call it for like the swarm, where they put all like the bodies go to make the hatchings happen. And when you actually get into it, at least this area that you get to go through looks awesome. Just seeing like all the people that they have potted around this area, showing where Jin's people went and also where all the outsiders went. And as you make your way through, you also find people that have just traversed down there and they ended up meeting the fate of dying as well. So at least there's some lore around this area as well. In this part, you get to actually use some different things that you used to use in the other games, like the Silverback, which doesn't have the gun in this one. It's just a construction one, but it's still fun to use. So all you use it for is just to get stuff out of your way, and you also use it to just smash enemies out of your way as well. After you push far enough, you finally find the Snatcher, and you end up having a 1v1 with him to go and save your father. And after killing him, you finally find his pod, and this happens.
Oh, God. Dad. Oh, come on, Dad. Dad! Dad! Damn it! Come on! Come on! Come on! God damn it! Wait, damn it! Get up!
JD,
Dad!
stop.
Get up!
JD.
Come on, Dad, get up! Come
JD,
on!
stop! You gotta let him go.
No. He's gone.
Help me get his armor off!
You're okay, Dad. We got you.
You smell bad.
Oh. James. In that pod. I was in their network.
Network? What network?
This whole goddamn hive. It's all connected. All the people they've potted. I could feel them. The locusts never died, James.
At this point in time, you end up finding out from Marcus that the people that were part of the outsider group is officially dead. The only one that is alive is Kate's mother, and the whole hive is all connected, so they are all listening to each other and they can see each other through each other's lens, which is really cool. I actually like the idea around this. Sadly, there's nothing really interesting after this. All you have to do is make your way back through the mine, and the way you do this is going legit the same way that you came in, so it's not all too interesting for the gameplay. So as long as you are into just like running and gunning, it's not all too bad, but it's legit just the same area you just traversed and got done going through, and you just have to do it again and just head back out. The way you get out of the cave because of the thing just getting destroyed is you shoot this wire and it makes all of you fly back up, which looks pretty cool. It's fun seeing like all the troops and stuff fall from the sky, and same with like the whole thing, like that construction and stuff like that breaking apart as you make your way up. But it leads to you getting near a grinder and then you destroy it so that you don't end up getting obliterated by it. But this leads to the next objective where you have to figure out where you're going to go next. Either you can go to the hive that you're going to go and save her mother, which Kate is advocating for, but Marcus ends up saying, why don't we go and get help before we even decide to go and do this? So you guys end up having a little argument over here, but then you guys come to the conclusion that you're going to head to the hive so that you can see what's going on there. Your next objective is to head to this dam so that you can scout out the area and see how the hive is and see how big it is, because Marcus ends up saying it's a lot bigger than the one that you just got through, so he's kind of concerned about how you're going to be able to break through it. On the way there, you end up hitting into another wind flare, and these are starting to get really annoying now. You already seen them 4 times throughout the game, so it really is just bothersome seeing the same exact effect over and over again and having to deal with it each and every time. But as you make your way through and end up getting to the next area, which is in the dam, you end up finding out a little bit about the war that happened and what ended up happening to all the people inside of the dam, which are all dead because Marcus did a run there to go and save those people, but they ended up dying because he had to make the decision that it was not worth their time to actually go in and save them. As you go through, though, you end up running into a new enemy, which is this big old brute thing, and oh my god, this thing eats damage. And a lot of the new enemies that you do get to fight, like the snatchers and stuff, are pretty annoying just because of how much damage they eat, and you don't really have a genuine idea of how many more bullets it's going to take to kill them, so it feels like they're just bullet sponges that you're fighting, and it makes for very unfun gameplay. After you destroy this monster called the Carrier, though, you end up heading up to the top of the dam, which another wind flare comes into play, so you have to deal with that again, and this is where you get to try out one of the trebuchets that came in from the last game in Gears of War 3, which is kind of fun being able to use that again, but it is pretty awful gameplay for it because of how bad the wind is. You have to try to shoot it in the right direction without like missing where it's supposed to hit, because you have to destroy this one bunker. But the issue is I thought you were trying to destroy the tower because I kept pointing at the tower, so I just kept shooting at that nonstop. And then I found out after, don't shoot at the tower, actually shoot at the bunker that's right behind it instead, so that you can get farther into the objective, which was not really very well explained. But as you make your way through, you do hear a little bit from Kate and JD talking to each other about like how she's concerned about her mother and like how they're going to be able to do this and like pull it off. So at least there's a little bit of connection going on right there. The issue is with the other character, Dell, he has like no actual story beat in this game. He is just supporting cast just to be supporting cast. He doesn't really say anything. He doesn't have any like bad things that go on or have any like internal thoughts or anything. He's legit just a background character, but made into a sidekick in this game. But after you push through and get through the dam, this leads to you actually turning it on so that you can get the radio tower and stuff on as well. And this is where you actually get to finally see the hive, and it's a lot bigger than you were expecting. So Kate actually finally comes to the decision that maybe we need to go and get some reinforcements. So you make your guys' way to that, and guess what? Another wind flare ends up hitting, so you have to deal with that again. And you are just running through a whole bunch of lightning strikes, making for the same type of gameplay that you just had to go through 2 seconds ago. And I don't know, it just at this point is getting really tedious and kind of annoying to have to deal with the same stuff over and over again, and it just isn't fun overall, at least to me. But at least with the cutscenes and stuff, at least you get some type of connection to these characters. And the one positive I'll give it over Judgment is that at least when you're going through this game, is all these people are actually talking to each other, and it feels like there's actually a connection going on, unlike in Judgment where they're all just standing there blankly and not talking to each other at all, feeling kind of dead in that game. At least there's some type of connection between these characters. The one thing that happens while you're going your way through this is that you meet up with the Scion, which is the one that captured your mother, and you have a boss fight with him, which isn't all too interesting. It's just a Brumac, now called a Swarmac, and you fight it by blowing up these generators so you do damage against it. And this is where you have to pop their blisters to actually kill it. That's the only way to do it. And the only reason why this mission isn't all too fun to do is because there's just enemy spam nonstop. So I would just suggest just to go for the Swarmac the whole time, because right after you kill the Swarmac, it kills off every other enemy that's in the area. And after you kill the Swarmac, the boss on top of it dies, and this is where you finally get to head to the radio tower. And it's the first time that it's actually like sun and cheery outside, so it actually looks nice when it's like this. And there's not actually a wind flare every 3 seconds, so you can actually see the environment for once. And it looks really nice. This leads to you having a conversation with Jin again, and she is cut off immediately after a Snatcher shows up. And this leads to the DV bots and the Locusts end up having a huge battle against each other. So you get to fight against 2 different armies at the same time. So this makes for pretty fun gameplay. If you can't deal with one enemy, like if you think they're tougher than the other, just support the other one in the fight and help them defeat the other enemy and then kill them off after, making for at least somewhat enjoyable gameplay overall. After you're mowing your way through the enemies, you end up at the radio tower where Marcus ends up finally contacting Baird, and he tells you he'll end up showing up to support you. And the way he does this is he shoots off a flare once you actually gets there. So until then, you have to do a wave defense mission. So yeah, 3rd wave defense mission in this game so far, and it is just as unfun as the other ones. At least they give you a turret in this one, so it makes it a lot quicker to go through. I just sat on the turret the whole time. I spawned in other turrets around me and put some barbed wire around, and it made it stupid easy to go through, aside from the one part when 2 Snatchers come in. They were pretty annoying just because the Snatchers do one-shot you with their one thing that they shoot out of their back. And after you end up wiping them out, he finally shoots out his flare, and this is where you actually get the first interaction between JD and them. And they do not like each other at all. Like, Baird likes him, but JD has like a hatred towards him because of the DV bots. But the DV bots were actually made for construction and stuff, but then Jin ended up turning them into soldiers, and that's why they're like that. But you also find out that Baird has been looking out for you for a long while because Marcus asked him to, so that's the reason why you were able to get into that tram when it showed up at the beginning of the game. So that was a cool nod to that. And also, like, all the other things that happened just like out of like luck, like doors opening for him and stuff like that, it was all because of him. So that was a cool little thing that they threw in on the side. But after doing this, you finally get to use this new vehicle because the cold train gets out as well. And this thing is awesome. It's just like a huge mech that you get to drive around. So if you like Gundam or something like that, it is kind of cool. The little thing that you get to use. And it's for the rest of the game. All you have to do now is just go through these other areas and just completely annihilate every enemy in your way. Like, Swarmacs are a breeze to fight, so are the Snatchers, and everything else is too. What makes this weapon so cool, the mech not only is just stupid strong, like being able to smash any enemy out of their way, but they're also using a construction weapon, so you're like shooting like these huge staples at them, which completely annihilates any enemy in your way, making for some really fun gameplay overall. After you push far enough through though, you end up hitting to the hive mind, and this is where you have to try and destroy it. And before you get to that though, this huge earthquake happens and this huge ass carrier comes out of the ground and takes down Phoenix's helicopters, so you have to defend them and yourself. And the way you do this is shooting at the tentacles that come out of the ground and destroying them. And once you do enough damage, you start stapling them to the ground, and then they rip them off, which is pretty gruesome, but it looks cool for gameplay. After doing that and like completely annihilating that thing, this leads into the last cutscene, and this is where you get to finally see Kate's mother and find out she was pretty much the hive mind queen. So the way that you have to deal with this is have her actually kill her mother so that she can get put out of her misery and defeat the hive. The one thing that makes this interesting is this is the point where you find out Kate is also pretty much a hive queen, so now they're going to be trying to capture her for the rest of her life, and this leads into a major role in Gears of War 5, so at least there's some type of like build up for the next game. The only other thing that you find out at this point is that she gets a necklace from her mother, and you find out this necklace is from Queen Mira, who ends up being Kate's grandmother, which is like an interesting plot twist to throw in at the end of the game. Overall, this campaign is a slog to go through. The only fun parts of this game are the beginning and the end, which is the one where you get to play as the mech and destroy everything, and also the beginning where you get to play through the Pendulum Wars, the Emergence Day, and then the end of Emergence Day. After all that stuff, though, there's nothing else in this game that I honestly thought was like a keynote that was all too interesting. Most of the characters aren't as interesting as the other casts that we've had in other games. The only cast that they truly are better than is Judgment, but that's not really saying much. No offense to like the cast in Judgment, but they're not all too interesting, and neither are they in this game. At least in the next game, they are built upon a lot more, and I will say the introduction of the next game is really good as well, but it sadly falls downhill from there. But let's get into Gears of War 5. Gears of War 5 starts off pretty promising, giving you a little intro about how now Kate is the new main character, and she is having all these visions and all this stuff happening in her mind, and it's giving her headaches, and it's pretty much like the Hive calling her to take over what her role is supposed to be in the Hive. Once you actually snap out of it and she wakes up, you end up playing as JD, at least in the beginning, and you are heading into a facility in Azura to try to turn on this beacon so that you can turn back on the Hammer of Dawn, which was shut down because they thought the weapon was too gruesome, which is fair because it did annihilate thousands of cities and thousands of people in like a blink of an eye. So once you actually head down into this is where you find out the new gameplay types, which is now the melee attack button there's two different ones depending on what you're using. So if you're using the bayonet and the chainsaw, now you have to press RB. By press RB, I mean you have to hold it so that you can actually use it. And then also RB is to reload. But you also press B to do melee, so you have to do that for knife attacks, but if you're trying to use the chainsaw or the bayonet, you have to use RB instead, making it pretty confusing for like combat. I don't really know why they would have two different types of like melee attacks. I'm not sure what was the decision on this and why they decided to do this, but your crew is made up of JD, Marcus Phoenix, Kate, and Del again, and you are followed by this robot named Dave. He ends up playing a short run of a story in this, but this is where you get to learn a little bit more about the bots in this game. The bots are a lot more different than what they were in the other games. Now they actually have abilities that they're going to be able to obtain. I'll just go over all the abilities now so we don't have to go onto them throughout the campaign. They can get like recon, they can do a thing where they can turn you invisible, but they also give you strength so that you can eat more bullets and other things like that. But they also can throw like flashbangs to support you. They can also put a shield barrier in front of you and a whole bunch of other stuff. So you're going to be playing through this campaign and collecting collectibles so that you can level it up, which is not fun, at least in my opinion. After you get a decent amount of them, it becomes kind of impossible to find the rest, and you'll kind of see why when I get into it a little bit later. But it just isn't that fun to actually go and collect. If it was all just given to you right off the bat and you could just use the bots, I think it would just be 10 times more entertaining, because I do like the new mechanics with the bot, having like the recon stuff and all that, but it just wasn't like fleshed out enough for it to make for the best of gameplay. The only other thing that you unlock around this area is that there's going to be little mini decisions that you get to make, and there's only one major decision that you get to make in the game overall, but that comes into later, so I won't really talk about that right now. The only decisions that you get to make around this time is what type of robots you want to spawn in to help you in battles, which I think makes it a lot more interesting than just you being a one-man army like you are in any of the other Gears games. The only games that actually give you like troops to push around with is Gears 2 and this one. And I always enjoy this. It feels like I'm actually part of something bigger than just being some small unit just pushing with just a one squad, destroying armadas all by ourselves. The other thing that you find out around this time, though, is JD is a lot different from what he was in the first game, and that is he is willing to sacrifice himself for the mission no matter what. He ends up getting to this one part where you're shooting the satellite dish up into space, and because the door for the missile to shoot up into space doesn't want to open, he ends up just saying, screw it, I'm just going to run in there and open the door while the flames are pushing through. And you can even see like everything getting destroyed around you because of this. And he legit was about to die, but he got lucky because he ends up falling down to the door and you guys escape from the room. And right after, Marcus ends up scolding you, saying it doesn't really matter how like important the mission is, as long as you survive is all that matters. But JD doesn't see it that way because, you know, he ended up surviving and no one got hurt except the robot. So he was willing to just take that risk and feel like it was an okay decision to make. After you wrap up with this, though, you head back to New Ephyra, and this place looks awesome. I thought this whole city looked really badass, and I wish we got to traverse it a lot more, but you only get to see a little snippet of it, which is on the inside, but it all looks so beautiful when you actually get in there. Marcus decides that he's going to go take the brunt of Jin's force so that you can go and talk to Damon Baird and see what he's going to be giving you. And when you actually get to him, he offers you Jack because Dave ended up just smashing his face against the wall until he destroys himself. So that was pretty awesome. So after he ends up getting blown up and Damon gives you this, you end up heading to this other place to meet up with your last member of your squad because Marcus is going to be taking a back burner at this point, and that is Foz. Foz is a shitter. He's not a nice person. He is like the stereotypical, I love the cog. The cog is like perfect. They only make the right orders. He actually supports what they did during Settlement 2 with the killing of all the protesters, but that's because he was the one that did it. So it makes for interesting like little combative arguments between Dell and him because, you know, you guys are now officially part of the cog again, so you have to deal with these types of like situations that ended up happening at one point in time, and you have to put it back into the past just because you have to work together to get the swarm dealt with. But after you end up having this little conversation, you head back to Jin and she starts scolding you, but then you guys are cut short because Settlement 2 ends up getting attacked again, and this time it's by the swarm, so you guys are sent out there to help them. But you are demoted, so Foz is taken over as captain of the group. But of course, knowing JD, he is not too happy with that, so he still tries to act like he is in command. Once you reach Settlement 2, it looks amazing. This is one of the best scenes I've seen in any of the games. It's really cool how you can see like the army swarming through the city, no pun intended, and seeing like pretty much desperation of humanity trying to hold off this swarm that is just coming out of nowhere. And while you're watching all this going on, you end up getting shot down, and this is where you have to defend yourself while you're stuck in the wreckage with Cole. And this part is okay. I think it's really cool just seeing like all these enemies and stuff at this point in time, but it gets a lot better after you get saved from the wreckage. And once you actually get up and actually get to be able to run around the city, this is where it gets 10 times better, and it introduces a couple new characters. This is where you are introduced to Lizzie Carmine, and you help her and the rest of her convoy get through the area. Even though she pretty much doesn't need any help, she ends up annihilating Snatchers and a whole bunch of other troops pretty much by herself. All she had for support is DBs, and DBs pretty much are ass. So they're not all too helpful in this. At least you were able to go up and support them in the gunfight. And this is where you can actually try out the bot a lot more. And Jack is so useful, mostly with just his flashbang that you get at this point in time. It literally makes every single gunfight 10 times easier, and I'm actually happy that they added this just for a feature on the side, and I hope in the next game they have the same thing, just not an open world as they did in this game. As you play through this area, this is a really fun mission overall. I think everything that is going on makes it a lot more intense, and plus they have the side story going on with Foz and Del still arguing over what happened in Settlement 2, leading to you seeing JD being a little bit more like wary about the whole situation and the conversation, and not really trying to like butt into it, and you can find out later why he doesn't want to, which makes it a lot more interesting for the plot. At this point, all you guys are doing is pushing your way to Clayton Carmine to make sure that the convoy is able to get away with all the civilians and the rest of the troops. And as you make your way up, it is a really fun little segment that you get to play. You just fight through a whole bunch of the swarm and end up being able to call in DB bots, making for very intense gameplay that I really wish we got a lot more of, just because after these like first act and the last act, there's nothing really in the middle that I honestly really like, but we're not going to talk about that until we actually get to it. But as you push your way up, the other thing that you are introduced to is the Lancer GL, which is a grenade launcher Lancer, and this thing fucking packs a punch. I thought it was going to be really boring when I first heard about it, because when you grabbed it, it was like, oh, it's just a grenade launcher on a gun. But it has like these mini bombs that all shoot out on the sides, and it destroys every single enemy that's in your way, and it looks pretty badass. I was honestly surprised that they ended up adding this, and I'm happy they did, because if it was just a basic Mark II Lancer just with a grenade launcher, it would have not been all too interesting. But at least this thing actually does look cool and is really fun to use during gameplay. After you end up defending this area and meet up with Clayton and Lizzie, this is where you see the new enemy that flies down and completely annihilates the rest of the squad, causing you guys to pretty much break up and run into different directions where you split off into your own little group. This new swarm that is part of the group is called the Leeches. They're pretty much the Krill from the other game, but instead of being stuck in just like the nighttime, they're able to go around during the day, and they just tear through people like it's nothing. And with the bots, as you get farther into the levels, you'll find out they are able to hack into these bots and take over the bodies and use them as their own weapons. So the DBs are enemies once again. So now you are not only dealing with the swarm, but you're also dealing with your own allies at this point, making the fights a lot more intense and harder to get through, making the gameplay just 10 times better, at least at the beginning of this game. It's absolutely amazing. Everything that happened throughout this campaign seemed to be setting up for something perfect, but it just somehow floundered all that and ended up falling into a major flop at the end of it. At this point, all you are really doing is going building to building, trying to find the rest of your squad and meet up with Marcus and Kate. So you and Del are just pushing through some enemies and fighting through the new DB bots. And it is really fun just fighting these like zombie types that are in the game. Instead of them having guns and stuff, they all just kind of rush at you. But you can use a lot more stealth in this game, so you can just sneak around them and just pull their battery out of their back, which kills them immediately, making it for pretty fun gameplay overall. Once you actually meet up with Marcus, you guys head into a theater, and this is where you get to find out a little bit more about Jace, if you remember him from Gears of War 3. He's one of the characters that came in and became a little bit more of a major role near the end of the game, but he just was more of a background character overall. You don't really get to see where he ended up going. He just is part of the theater. That's all you know, is that he does screenplays and stuff like that. But after hearing that, you don't see him ever again, which is kind of odd to me. I'm surprised they didn't try to play into his character a little bit more in this game, but maybe they just didn't want to pay Michael Jordan to come back and do the acting for the character again, so they just decided, we'll just drop him and not use him in this game, which makes sense if you're going for like profit wise. It's just maybe not worthwhile paying someone that much money for maybe a small like little throw in. After fighting through the theater, though, this leads to another battle with the Swarmak, and this is where you actually get to do another little mini boss fight. The one thing I will say is a positive in this game is I'm happy they decided to add an actual health bar to these bigger bosses and just bigger enemies overall, because in the other game I was complaining that you couldn't even tell how much damage you're doing to them, and they're all just bullet sponges. At least in this game I can actually get an idea of how much progress I've made against the enemy. I would rather them do it with like showing the actual actual damage on the enemy, but it's fine. At least with this, I can actually get a general idea of how well I'm doing during this fight. The one thing I think is kind of cool is Cole ends up driving a motorcycle into his mouth and blowing him the hell up, but this leads into a cutscene where you find out what actually happened with Settlement 2.
So, Dal, see any friendly faces you recognize? Maybe that's the peaceful protester who broke my nose.
You deserve worse than a broken nose.
Why don't you show me what I deserve? Stop! Enough of this shit!
You're a goddamn coward! A coward? Wow. Well, have I got news for you?
Pause.
Don't.
Guess who ordered the first shot, Del? Directly into those peaceful protesters of yours. Yeah, that's right. Lieutenant Pedigree there.
Guys. Come on, guys. Look, I mean, they were throwing incendiary... The whole thing was confusing, all right? I didn't mean to have it happen. Never mind.
I love this scene. Overall, it makes it a lot more interesting for the plot, showing that JD even has his flaws and that he was the reason that all the people in Settlement 2 ended up getting shot and killed, and he's the one that made that direct order to Foz, making it a lot more spicy for the conversations and the differences between them. But sadly, this is not done well throughout the game. At this part, it seems like it's going to be something intense later on, but it is just thrown into the fucking garbage, and you'll see that later. You guys end up getting hit by another ambush by the Swarm, and this is where JD asked for the Hammer of Dawn to get struck down by Baird, and Baird said he's not going to be able to do that just because there's no way of actually targeting the area and hitting it. So JD makes the rash decision to say, how about you just target my armor and you just shoot at me, and then we'll just be able to take it out that way. But this leads into this.
Shut it down! Shut it down! God damn it! Just run! While I do love this cutscene, and I think it does make it a lot more exciting and shows because of JD being brash and just doing whatever he wanted to do, has led to other people dying, like another Carmine, RIP, another Carmine doing Clayton dirty like that, and showing so many civilians have dying as well just because he decided to make the dumb decision to make the Hammer of Dawn hit. I don't like that it ended up having a 4-month time skip right after, and now that you're playing as Kate, I don't like that either. I think you should have kept playing as JD and let him live through his flaws I think the time skip kind of ruins the whole tension between the group. I get that they still have that tension between each other, but I think it should have been right after while the flame is still hot, so that you can actually see these intense scenes of them yelling at each other, but you don't really get to see that, and this is where the game starts to officially go downhill. While this mission is still really fun that we're going into right now, it is just the peak of where it's going to be, and then it just goes downhill from here. Once you actually get to play as Kate, you head to an outsider camp. I guess you guys have been hiring and like making all the other outsiders join the cog so that you guys can fight the swarm together. You and Dell are the ones that head to this location. As you make your way through, though, you can see that the people do not like the cog. And I thought this was going to be like the settlement that you play through, because I did hear this game was open world, so I thought this was going to be like the base of operations that you get to hang out at. But then you end up finding out later it is not. But when you actually get into this location and go to meet up with the leader, you end up finding out that Oscar survived in the fourth game. You do see that in the end cut scene in the fourth game, but if you didn't see that, then you know he is in this game, at least right here. I think Oscar is a pretty cool character, but he is not done well in either game. You didn't get enough time to build upon him. All you know is that Kate has a relationship with him, and that's pretty much it. This is also where you find out that there is over 100 components to collect just in this location alone, like for the open world area, for the robot. I think that's fucking insane, and you should not be expecting people to do that much and just be traversing these random areas without like an actual idea of where it's going to be. I think it's a terrible decision by the devs, but if that's what they wanted to do, whatever. I guess that's what they wanted to decide to do, but it just does not work well for gameplay. At least I am not going to go back and try to find all these collectibles because it's just a waste of time. But when you actually end up talking to Oscar, he ends up declining to join your group, so this leads into an attack by the swarm yet again, and you guys end up defending for a while and pushing through the town. At least these fights are a little bit fun, just fighting through the town with Oscar and Dell. And once you actually get to the gate, this is where you see Kate get captured, and she ends up becoming one of the swarm. The one thing I think is really weird is that you can see the swarm actually working in this game, but for some reason we still haven't gotten the beast mode back where you can actually play as the swarm and kill the cog as like the bad guy in the multiplayer. I thought this would have been like a perfect way of showing that how it's going to work in the multiplayer, but no, they kind of just throw it in the campaign and you don't actually get to see it again, which is really disappointing, at least to me. I do like fighting as the enemies and just killing the other enemies, showing that like she still had some resemblance of herself, but it's also showing that she is part of the Hive Queen. But as you make your way through, you end up seeing the new enemy called the Warden. It's just like a two-sworded big-ass dude that just beats the shit out of people, and it's pretty cool. But this leads to Oscar's death, where you actually see Kate kill Oscar herself. She ends up stabbing him with the Warden and murdering him. And right after this happens, the Snatcher is killed and you are saved by Marcus and them. And this is when you head back inside, and this is where you end up finding Oscar and seeing that he's dead. The one thing I think makes it a lot more interesting for the plot as well at this point is she does not tell anyone about this until later on. She doesn't even want to bring it up, but she does know in the back of her mind that she is the reason that Oscar is dead. The other thing that you see at this point is JD come back into the frame, and he is all types of fucked up. Now he is bald, his arm is completely burned, and now he has to use the stim that you use for the bot all the time just to make sure that he doesn't take any more damage or feel the pain in his arm, making a really unique detail, at least to me. I thought it was really cool. But after you have this little tension between them, it doesn't really lead anywhere. Even Dell is still having like normal conversations with him. He's just saying that he's worried about Kate and he doesn't know if you should be able to trust her just because she is able to take over all these hives, and just from what her mother did and all these headaches that she's been having, it is something that you want to watch out for, and maybe she might turn against them in the future, making it a lot more exciting for the plot in that way as well. After that, though, this is where the game completely just shits the bed. This is where you unlock the skiff, and you and Dell are going to be going around and exploring to find out more about Kate and what they're supposed to do to try to stop the hive, like if they have to kill her or whatever it may be. Once you unlock this gift, this is where the open world of the game begins, and this is where you get to go and do side quests. All the side quests are not all too interesting. All of them are for like blueprints to make the bot a lot better in combat, but aside from that, they're pretty useless, and they also have a whole bunch of components to find. If you care about like lore and stuff, there is certain things that you can find to add to the lore as well, like from older characters that have died in the previous games, making a little bit of like interesting details to go and find for yourself. And it does lead to a little Easter egg that you can get as one part of the game, which I did not get in this game, but I do know about it just because I have watched videos over it. But aside from that, like for like the side quests and stuff, it is not too fun. I'm gonna be real, this is where all the main missions start going downhill as well. I'm not even gonna really talk about many of them just because they're not actually interesting. Most of them are just setting up radar dishes to try to find the location of this lab so you can learn more about like what happened with her grandmother and what's going to be happening to her for like the plot, but all those missions suck. I'm gonna be real, none of them are interesting. You get to go through the prior lab that you did in Gears of War 3 and or was it 2? It might have been Gears of War 2. You just go through that one again and it's just not interesting. I'm not sure why they decided to do this. The other thing that comes back is wind flares, and they're really annoying just like they were in the 4th game, and they are kind of excessive at this point in time as well, where they just keep using it non-stop. I'm not sure why they like doing this, but it makes for very unfun gameplay overall. But yeah, all these missions are not that great, so I'm not even going to really talk about them, and we're just going to get on to like what the next main plot mission is in a second. Aside from all that stuff, how is it just like traversing these areas? I personally would just say don't do it. It's just such a waste of time. Yeah, sure, you could upgrade the bot, Jack, but why would you? Jack is already OP, like off the rep, but there's nothing else that you really need to make him any stronger that is really noteworthy at this point in time. I would honestly just skip it all together and just keep playing the campaign. The only issue with it though is these missions are so fucking slow. A lot of them are interesting and they just try to drag on the campaign a lot longer than it should be. The campaign ended up being, I think, like 8 to 10 hours when I played through it, and none of it was all too interesting after Act 1, and it just made me not want to play the game. It got back to where it was in 4 and Judgment, where I just kept looking at the time and seeing how long I had until I actually beat the game, and I was looking up percentages again, which is not a good thing that you want your players to look up how far I am in the game. That usually shows that there is a problem with the game and that you don't want to keep like playing it. At least to me, that's how it works. The other things that you get to see is some random outsiders that died in certain locations. At least they give you a little bit of like lore and a bit of interest to the areas, but they're just still not that good. The only other thing that you can find is like relic weapons that are just like stronger or different variants of weapons that you can find normally, but they give a little buff to them. If you really care about that, they do have that, but it's just whatever. It honestly all just feels kind of whatever. I'm not sure why I should care about any of this, if I'm going to be honest. But after doing a decent amount of these radar dishes and getting them all set up, this is when you head back to this lab. And the way that you have to get into the lab is by finding this melting thing to melt it down. And once you actually grab it and melt it down, this is where you actually get to head into the lab. And this is where the game picks up a little bit more again, but not for long. Once you reach the lab and get inside, this reintroduces you to Niles, which was the person in the lab in the prior games, and he is a more new and improved version of that version. And this is where you get to see the facility that they were working in, and this is awesome. You get to see all these troops frozen in time and showing the Locust Rebellion while it was happening. You get to see all the troops move their way to try to go and meet up with the Locust to make sure that they don't get farther into the facility, making for a very intense like setup. And I actually really do like it. I think it's a really cool scene. And you also get to see the sires again at this point, and you also get to fight them a little bit later, spoiler alerts. And it's cool to see these types of enemies and stuff like that again. And I'm happy that they decided to add a little bit back from like, hey, remember all this type of stuff. But as you play through, you end up having a conversation when Niles is talking to Kate, He ends up telling her they're going to end up trying to kill you because you are part of the hive. And she ends up getting manipulated to the point where she almost kills Dell at this one point just because of all the information that was given, making it a very intense scene. And the reason why she is willing to do this is because after a decent amount of time, like working together as you play through the open world, the one thing that does keep happening is that you are trying to get tricked into not trusting your friends. Like the grandmother just keeps nonstop talking to Kate, and Mira just is trying to turn them against them so that she'll just take over the hive for her, but she just will not give in to it. So she ends up coming to the conclusion just to get it completely removed from her head. And instead of like lobotomizing her, they have a different way of doing it, and Niles is willing to go and do it. So you guys head to his next part of the lab where he ends up doing the test on her. And while he's doing it, he ends up removing it, but causing an even bigger problem and actually allowing Mira to technically come back at this point, which is really dumb. Personally, I think it's fucking stupid to just see Mira as the main antagonist again. I really did not want to see that. But you know, this is what you get, I guess. I think it's really stupid, but the one things that make this interesting is that you do find out that he ended up dying, and that's the reason why that whole area is frozen. He froze it so that he could survive, and that's why he's in that little robot. As you find out that she is getting it turned like hurt and stuff like that, he runs away like a little shit. Like he actually like drives away from her. But this also releases this other berserker that's in this other cage. So this leads into a boss fight later. And honestly, all these fights that you do get to do in this area are at least somewhat fun because of the frozen cryo weapon that you get to use. But aside from that and the boss fight at the end, it's all right. I think it's pretty cool. I do like the setup, but I do not like how they decided the antagonist was going to be her again. I was hoping that it was still going to be waning between Kate and doing it or not doing it, and then maybe succumbing to it and actually becoming the bad guy would have been a lot more interesting than just having the same rehash of the same antagonist. But, you know, I guess that's what you get. After you wrap up and escape the lab, you guys head up and get saved by Marcus Phoenix and Damon Baird, and you guys head off to the desert to turn on more beacons for the Hammer of Dawn so that you can officially use the weapon. The reason why they decide this is because they find out the swarm is officially has a new hive like mother, so they have to try to deal with the threat as quick as possible and have something strong enough to deal with it again. So once they hit the desert, you find out this is UIR territory. It does sound interesting at the beginning. I was very excited when I actually heard about this until you actually get to play through the area and you find out it's a huge sack of shit. The only positive of this area is that you get to finally see Paddock again from Gears of War Judgment, but aside from that, this whole area sucks. The side missions are 10 times worse, and everything else is overall just not fun. And let's get into it. The one other thing that you actually get in this area is that you get to have JD and Foz part of your group again, and they do have a little bit of conversations during this, but they don't even argue. They're all butt buddies again, and it's really fucking stupid. I hated this because I was like, okay, so all this tension that you guys built up just to be like, oh, sorry, yeah, I did do that. Sorry about that. I guess we can be friends again. And then they're like, oh, it's so hard to be mad at you. I guess we can be friends again. It's like, what the fuck? What was the point of anything that happened in the first game then? I mean, not first game, but you know what I mean. Like, it legit just ruins the whole fucking idea. Why did you even set up this tension just to be like, let's be butt buddies again? Just so they could remove JD for like 3 to 4 hours worth of gameplay just to bring him back so they can be like, oh, we're best friends again. It's so stupid. And Foz went from being a huge asshole to, oh, you guys are my best friends too. It's just like, what the fuck is happening? I actually do like Foz a lot better at this point in time because he's not an annoying little shit. But aside from that, it just really fucking bothers me how like quickly they decided to change the like act of these characters because like they're like, oh, I can feel your troubles and I just want to be here to support you. Like, shut up. This is so stupid. I thought he was going to end up betraying her, so I was completely fine with it at first. But no, that doesn't even fucking happen either. But how are, like, what's wrong with the side quests? They're all fucking boring. They're just as bad as they were in the other location, and the collectibles were even 10 times worse in this location. I can't find shit in this place. It looks like ass, and I just don't like in traversing this area. It's you're just running around in the skiff again, but now your main objectives in this one instead are to build this rocket, and these missions fucking suck. They suck. They're all terrible. The only good thing about this area is a new weapon called the Claw, but aside from that, there's nothing like redeeming of this area. As you play through and play the main quest, the only one I'm actually going to go into is the last one because all the other ones suck asshole. They're not even worth even talking about. As you play through them, all you really do is just grab different rocket parts in each and every location, and it's just really boring. I guess it is a good way of like building up the characters, but I already know the characters enough not to even really care. The only one I didn't really know is Foz, and I'm happy they gave a little bit more dialogue to him. But aside from that, there's nothing else to it to make me feel like, oh, I really needed this like in the game. I feel like these games need to be more linear. With this open world aspects, if they're going to be doing open world, they have to fill out these areas a lot more than just having a dead plane where I'm just driving for 5 minutes with awkward silence with sometimes some poopy dialogue in the middle of it. Well, what happens after you build the rocket so that you can shoot the satellite dishes into space? This is where you end up having the little riftworm. By little riftworm, I mean this big ass one come out of the ground and it starts attacking the rocket and it leads into like a huge battle. And this mission's actually kind of fun. At least with the end of these missions, you could really tell they put some time and effort into them. But sadly, the open world aspects ruin these completely. Like, I think this mission would have been 10 times better and a lot more exciting if I didn't have to deal with the crap earlier. But as you play through this one, the one thing that makes it actually interesting and fun to do is not only are you fighting enemies, but the riftworm that you are fighting, or whatever it is pretty cool. I actually enjoy the little fight that you get to do with him and just like having to run away from him as like the whole thing falls apart and leading to him getting burned to like shit and ends up surviving somehow. I'm not sure how, but he ends up getting burned all the hell, and the fight that you have with him isn't all too bad. Honestly, it's not like the best thing I ever played in my life, or it's not even in the top 5. It's not the best boss fight, but it still is a lot better than what you were actually getting in the other missions. A lot of the other missions just come down to you just grabbing pieces of the rocket, like I said prior. Like when you needed like the head, you went to this one point, and then if you needed a different part of the body, you had to go to this other point, making for such boring gameplay. At least they did have some collectibles so you can learn more about the UIR. That's the only positive of it, but aside from that, there's nothing really to these. But this leads into the last act of the game, which is another positive at least for the game. But it took too much time for this to actually lead to anything, so it's hard to even say this was even that good. After all this happens, you head back to Jin, and she ends up trying to arrest Kate to use her for like the hive, and this leads into a little altercation where they're about to shoot each other, but then Olafira ends up getting attacked by the swarm, so you guys are sent out to attack the swarm to stop them from actually breaking into the city, making for a very intense and enjoyable ending for the game. As you make your way through, you are gathering these beacons to place around the area so that you can use the Hammer of Dawn and actually have a precise shot instead of like missing each and every shot and hitting random people like they were doing prior. So this part is actually really fun to go through, and here's some of the reasons why. While the battles all feel kind of the same, it is really fun to finally use the Hammer of Dawn after not seeing it in Judgment really, or even in Gears of War 4. So it is a nice change of pace actually having this weapon back and being able to use it. And it's not like you can use it in each and every location. You actually have to push to the objective, get it set up, and then get ready for the battle. The one thing that makes this awesome is not only can you see the ruins of Old Ephira, but you also get to see the rest of the army again for once, because all of them disappeared for who knows why, because of the open world of the game. And this is also where you get to see in the background, you can see other people placing the beacons down, and you can actually see them shooting the Hammer of Dawn, making it even cooler, showing that you are not the only person doing this battle, and you're not the only main character in this area. There's other people that are fighting and trying to make sure that they save Ephira from getting attacked by the swarm, making it a lot more interesting than actually just being this main character that's just a Billy badass, I guess. As you go through though and fight through these areas, all you are doing is placing down the beacons. You and Marcus end up getting your beacon placed down, and he ends up sticking with it while you push to go and help Paddock because his heli is taken down. As you make your way to him, it is a decent fight, and I honestly enjoyed all these like little battles that you had in this area, making for very enjoyable gameplay overall. As you make your way to Paddock and you end up defending it with him, you end up heading outside with the beacon to set it up so that you can shoot down the Hammer of Dawn in the area, where you're able to use it for a little bit, and it is so fun just annihilating enemies. And what's cool is one of your AI are also using it as well, so you guys are both just annihilating each and every swarm that is coming into the location. But then you guys are attacked, and this is where the beacon ends up getting destroyed. After the beacon is destroyed, you end up seeing the Locust Queen come out of nowhere, and she starts having a conversation with Kate, and this is where Dell and JD decide to try to attack her and end up getting captured. Once you all have this tentacle thing all around all three of your throats, this is where the only major decision of the game comes into play. This is where you get to decide if either JD or Dell gets to survive. While some people would say they want to pick Dell as the person to survive, it wouldn't make any sense because you know damn well it's going to be JD that gets to survive. Not only is Dell more of like a background side character that is only there for the supporting cast, JD has so many problems that he has to work through, and it makes sense why they would want him to survive so that they can keep the tension up for the next game. But who knows, maybe that end up being wrong, and maybe you'll be able to choose whichever ending there is. But I think it was just honestly a terrible decision at this point in time when they actually had this happen, because I think they should have decided it for you, just because why have this decision be made by the player? Now all you are doing is dividing people into which one they would rather have, and if there is a set ending, what was the point of it? The one positive of it, at least, is that it changed the different cutscenes, and some of the cutscenes seem a lot better if you pick JD to be the one to survive, because you actually get to see some more emotion from him. But if you pick Dell as the one that gets to survive, it feels like they didn't even really work on the cutscenes for him, which is really disappointing. Well, it does show a lot more emotion from Marcus, because, you know, having JD die is just another person that Marcus has lost because of this war with the Locust. And it is a really rough scene, and I'm pretty sure most people went back and changed their decision just to make sure that Marcus still had his son, even though he did make his mistakes throughout this game. I did like how they did try to build up Dell to make him a lot more of an interesting character, at least in the campaign, and gave him a lot more screen time, and it makes sense why they did it, and the reason why they did it is so that maybe some people would actually go pick Dell to survive instead of JD. And it did work for a lot of people because it did make him a lot more of an interesting character than he was in the first game, where he was just like this run-of-the-mill character. But after you end up doing these and getting all these cutscenes done, you do end up fighting the final boss, which ends up being that tentacle monster that you fought back at the rocket site. He somehow ended up here as well, and you end up having this last little battle with him, and you start shooting it with these huge cannons, and because it doesn't do enough damage, Jack decides to sacrifice himself and goes into his mouth, and this is where the Hammer of Dawn hits him in the head and completely annihilates it. This part was really cool, and I really do like this, but I do not like the ending where they're all just like happy and giddy and just like smiling and having a conversation. I feel like it's just really weird to have this type of ending. I feel like this should have been a lot more of a morbid ending where they just feel like they lost, because they did. They lost so much, and there's nothing that's positive about the situation. Yeah, sure, you get to smile and think about another day, but with what happened with the beacons being destroyed, the Hammer of Dawn is now officially fucked. There's no way of using it unless they rebuild these and replace them, but they're probably not going to be able to. That's probably going to be the plot device in the next game. And they also lost a dear friend to them, either being Dell or JD, and just having them smile after is just kind of weird. Mostly if you pick Marcus and JD ends up being the one that dies, it's really weird to see him smiling at the end. I know he gets to see the coal train, but like it's just so weird to think that he would be like smiling at this point. I get it's probably just a save face, but it just doesn't feel right to me, at least. But Overall, how did I feel about the campaign? Honestly, Act 1 was perfect. I think everything that they were thinking about at the beginning was really good for the game and design choice. But when it got to Act 2 and 3 is where the game really fell downhill with the most boring gameplay I've actually played in any of the Gears games. I think it was honestly worse than Gears of War 4 with it, to the point where it's just like, I don't know how you can do that. Gears of War 4 was by far my least favorite in the series. I get Judgment was really bad, but I just don't find 4 fun at all. I just couldn't find any charm in that game. But with at least this one, the first act was completely perfect in every way, shape, or form. And the last act was great aside from the decision, just because I think it's just a waste of time and we're not going to do anything with it. And I think the issue is, and why we ended up getting E-Day instead of Gears of War 6, is because I don't think they know which ending to actually pick, and that's what just pushed it back. I think they genuinely put themselves in like a rock and a hard place, so they just have to do something instead of trying to work on this and get it done. Or they're working on it to getting it done, and they just need more time because they genuinely don't know what the fuck they did with the ending. But yeah, overall, it's okay. It's better than 4, and it's better than Judgment, so at least that's a positive. But it's nothing compared to Gears of War 1 through 3. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to see those types of games again. The other campaign that you get in this point is the little Hive Buster one, and we're not even going to really go into it. Honestly, I'm just going to give you my thoughts about it because it really was not that fun. You get to play as these new cast of characters, and you have to try to find this acid that you can use so that you can destroy the hives with it. And the idea around the Hive Buster thing was kind of cool, where they put on these masks and they go inside the hive and then they destroy it from the inside. I thought that's what the campaign was going to be about, but no, the whole time you're looking for this acid to destroy it, and it was a slog to get through. I don't really like any of the cast. I think the one chick that they introduced, I don't even remember any of their names. I legit played this a day ago, so that's pretty bad that I don't even remember that at all. but she has a whole bunch of tattoos on her, and then you also get to see Hannah Cole, so that was kind of cool. So you get to see the Coltrane's daughter. But aside from those things, it's just not that fun overall. And it does lead you into the mode that you're supposed to unlock after or go play after. And that is the Hive Buster mode. And I was kind of excited to go and try out this mode. But then when I found out what it was, I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And this is 10 times worse than what I was expecting. All you really do is keep running to these exits, turning on these buttons, and then running to the next part of the exit and doing that over and over again. It's not fun. I don't genuinely understand why this was even a mode. I thought it was going to be more exciting where you actually get to explore the hive and you go and save other civilians or other COG and then make your way out with them as well. But no, it's just you destroying it with the acid and that's it. So yeah, it's not really worthwhile in going to play. I will say the one positive is the multiplayer is still pretty fun in this one. I usually just play against bots because it's easy to zone out to. And for some reason I have a 300% booster on my XP, so that's kind of cool. But overall, how did I feel about all 3 of them? Gears of War Judgment was awful, and I probably will never go and play that game again. Same thing with Gears of War 4. At least Gears of War 5 had some highlights to it, but it just wasn't anything compared to Gears of War 1 through 3. And this really was just the steep decline that I was not expecting to happen to the series. And I'm kind of upset that I even went and played these games because it kind of just showed that it just went downhill from after 3. I did play Judgment, like I said in the last video, but I only played the multiplayer. I never really knew how bad the campaign was, and also I was like 12 or 13, so it wasn't like anything I could actually remember and actually have critical thoughts of. But we'll see how Emergence Day ends up turning out. I'm excited for it, but with a lack of like trailers and stuff for it, I'm not even sure if it's going to be good. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and a sub. And if you have suggestions for anything else to check out, make sure to leave them down in the comments down below. And sorry for taking one day extra to get this done. I ended up getting caught up on Space Marine 2, and that's probably going to be on the next video. And it's been an amazing experience so far. I have never played the series before, so this is a new thing for me, and I'm happy that it ended up turning out really well, and I'm excited to even talk about it in the next video. But I'll see y'all next time. See ya.